Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cool metal wall of the medical bay aboard the exploration vessel, Meridian. 3 years into humanity's first diplomatic mission to the Zephyrian Empire, she had treated everything from plasma burns to exotic allergic reactions to alien foods. But nothing had prepared her for the message that arrived that morning. Dr. Chen, report to Captain Morrison's quarters immediately, the ship's AI had announced in its neutral tone. Now she stood before her commanding officer, studying the holographic display that showed a massive alien vessel approaching their position. The ship was unlike anything in their database, sleek organic curves mixed with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "The Zephyrian Emperor himself is requesting our assistance," Captain Morrison said, his weathered face grave. "His daughter has been afflicted with something their entire medical establishment cannot cure. They've heard about human medical practices and specifically requested a human physician." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Their medical technology is centuries ahead of ours. What could we possibly offer that they can't do themselves?" "That's what we need to find out. The Emperor's ship will dock with us in 6 hours. Pack everything you think you might need." The docking was an event unto itself. The Zephyrian vessel attached to theirs like a living organism, growing connections and pathways that seamlessly integrated with the Meridian systems. Sarah watched through the observation deck as alien figures in flowing robes glided through the newly formed corridor. Emperor Vexhai was nothing like the diplomatic Zephyrians she had encountered before, where others of his species typically stood 8 feet tall with graceful, elongated limbs. The Emperor was massive, nearly 10 feet of muscle and chitinous armor. His forearms moved with surprising grace, and the bioluminescent patterns along his exoskeleton pulsed with an urgent rhythm. "Human physician," he said in heavily accented Standard, his translator struggling with emotional undertones. "My daughter fades. Your kind, you fix things that should not be fixed. You heal what others call impossible." Sarah had heard this before. Humans had developed a reputation among the galactic community for their stubborn refusal to accept medical impossibilities. Where other species would gracefully accept natural limits, humans threw themselves against every barrier with reckless determination. "I'll need to examine her first, Your Majesty. Can you tell me about her symptoms?" The Emperor's patterns dimmed to almost nothing. "Cathara has the burning mind. It is a condition that affects royal bloodlines. The mind becomes too active, too powerful. She cannot control her psychic abilities. They consume her from within." Sarah felt a chill. Zephyrian royalty were powerful psychics, capable of reading thoughts and influencing matter at the molecular level. An uncontrolled royal mind could theoretically tear apart a starship. The medical bay on the Emperor's vessel was a marvel of biotechnology. Walls that breathed, monitoring systems that grew from the floor like flowering vines, and in the center, a crystalline chamber containing the patient. Princess Cathara appeared to be unconscious, her 7-foot frame suspended in a glowing fluid. Even in her unconscious state, objects around the chamber occasionally shifted or cracked. Her skin showed the telltale stress patterns of psychic overload, dark veins spreading like lightning across her pale blue flesh. "She has been like this for 3 cycles. The Emperor explained. "Our healers say her mind will burn itself out within days. They have done everything possible." Sarah studied the readouts, using her portable human scanner alongside the alien equipment. What she saw made her frown. "Your Majesty, this isn't a disease or a genetic condition. This is what we humans would call a panic disorder with psychosomatic manifestations." The room fell silent. The Emperor's counselors, tall, robed figures with multiple arms, began speaking rapidly in their musical language. "Impossible," one of them finally said in Standard. "The burning mind is a physical ailment. It has been documented for millennia." Sarah turned to face them, feeling the weight of their skeptical stares. This was the moment that would define her career, and possibly human-Zephyrian relations. With respect, your documentation might be missing a crucial element. In human medicine, we've learned that the mind and body are more connected than many species realize. Your daughter isn't dying from psychic overload. She's terrified of her own power. She gestured to her scanner readings. Look at these brainwave patterns. This isn't random psychic discharge. This is a fear response so intense that it's manifesting as physical symptoms. She's caught in a feedback loop. Her fear makes her powers stronger, which makes her more afraid, which makes her powers even stronger. The lead counselor's bioluminescent patterns flashed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as indignation. Human, you suggest that centuries of Zephyrian medical knowledge are wrong? I'm suggesting that maybe you've been treating the symptoms instead of the cause, Sarah replied calmly. May I try something? The Emperor's massive head tilted. Your methods? Cognitive behavioral therapy, combined with controlled exposure to her powers in a safe environment. We need to break the fear cycle. What followed was the strangest week of Sarah's career. Working alongside Zephyrian medical technology, she essentially performed psychotherapy on an unconscious alien princess. She used human techniques for treating anxiety disorders, adapted for a psychic mind that could read emotions and thoughts. The breakthrough came when Sarah realized that Cathara wasn't just afraid of her powers. She was afraid of hurting someone she cared about. Through careful psychic monitoring, Sarah discovered that the princess had accidentally injured a servant during her first major psychic manifestation. The guilt and terror had created the destructive feedback loop. Sarah spent hours in the crystalline chamber, using meditation techniques she'd learned in medical school, projecting calm thoughts, while the Zephyrian equipment gradually reduced the suppression of Cathara's consciousness. Princess, she said softly as the alien woman's large golden eyes finally opened. You're safe. Your power is not your enemy. Cathara's first words were barely a whisper. I hurt them. I hurt my friend. Accidents happen, Sarah replied. What matters is learning to control your gift so it doesn't happen again. Over the next 3 days, Sarah worked with the princess, teaching her breathing exercises, meditation techniques, and cognitive restructuring methods that humans use to treat everything from PTSD to severe phobias. The Zephyrian medical team watched in amazement as their princess's condition stabilized and improved. The real test came when Cathara attempted to use her powers deliberately for the first time in months. Sarah stood beside her as the princess focused on lifting a simple metal sphere from a table. The sphere rose smoothly, held steady for several seconds, then gently returned to the table. Cathara turned to Sarah with tears in her golden eyes. How did you know? Sarah smiled. Because humans have learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is face your fears instead of running from them. Your people's medicine is incredibly advanced, but it focused on suppressing your symptoms rather than addressing their cause. The Emperor's gratitude was overwhelming. His bioluminescent patterns blazed so brightly that Sarah had to shield her eyes. Human Sarah Chen, you have given me back my daughter. Name your reward. Sarah looked around the incredible medical bay, a technology that could regrow limbs and cure diseases that would baffle human medicine for centuries. But what struck her most was the Princess Cathara, standing upright and strong, her psychic aura now controlled and purposeful. I don't need a reward, Your Majesty. This is why I became a doctor. But as she spoke those words, Sarah noticed something interesting in the Emperor's expression, a look that suggested her response itself was somehow significant. The way his counselors exchanged glances made her wonder if there was more to this situation than a simple medical emergency. The Emperor's massive hand gently touched her shoulder. Dr. Chen, You have shown us something about healing that we had forgotten. Your reward will come, whether you seek it or not. As Sarah prepared to return to the Meridian, Princess Kethara approached her privately. Doctor, there is something you should know. The burning mind, it is not just a medical condition among my people. It is a test. A test? Every royal heir must face it. Most overcome it through strength of will. Some do not survive. The princess's patterns showed deep emotion. But no one has ever cured it by understanding the mind beneath the power. My father is very interested in how humans think about such problems. Sarah felt a sudden chill of understanding. She hadn't just treated a patient. She had demonstrated something fundamental about human nature to one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Back aboard the Meridian, Captain Morrison debriefed her about the mission. Excellent work, Doctor. The Emperor seemed very impressed. Captain, I think there might be more to this than just medical treatment, Sarah said. I get the feeling we've just passed some kind of test. Morrison nodded grimly. The thought had occurred to me, too. Well, we'll know soon enough. The Emperor has requested permission to follow us to our next diplomatic stop. Sarah stared out at the stars, wondering what she had set in motion. In her experience, when powerful aliens took an interest in human methods, it usually led to unexpected consequences, sometimes wonderful, sometimes terrifying. But as she watched the Emperor's magnificent vessel maintaining formation alongside their own ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next would change everything for humanity's place in the galaxy. The princess had said her father was interested in how humans think. Sarah had a growing suspicion that this medical emergency had been carefully orchestrated to test exactly that. And if so, what did it mean that they had passed? The stars offered no answers. But Sarah knew one thing for certain. Her simple act of treating fear with understanding instead of suppression had caught the attention of powers she was only beginning to comprehend. The real question was what they planned to do about it. The diplomatic station orbiting Kepler 442b was supposed to be a routine stop. The Meridian had arrived 3 days ahead of schedule for negotiations with the Crystalline Collective, giving the crew time to rest and resupply. Sarah had planned to spend her time studying Zephyrian medical journals that Princess Kethara had gifted her. Those plans evaporated when she received an urgent summons to the station's central council chamber. The meeting room was a testament to interstellar cooperation, adaptive environments that shifted to accommodate the needs of different species. Sarah found herself facing representatives from 7 different civilizations, all seated around a hovering conference table that adjusted its height and atmosphere for each delegate. Captain Morrison sat with the human diplomatic team, looking as confused as Sarah felt. Across from them, Emperor Vexhai dominated his section of the room, his massive frame making even the other large aliens appear small. Dr. Chen, began Ambassador Trillax of the Crystalline Collective, her silicon-based form chiming softly as she spoke. We understand you recently treated Princess Kethara for the Burning Mind Syndrome. Sarah glanced at Captain Morrison, who gave her a subtle nod to proceed. Yes, that's correct. May I ask why this medical case is of interest to the collective? A ripple of what seemed like amusement passed through the assembled aliens. Sarah caught the Emperor's eye and saw something that might have been approval in his bioluminescent display. Doctor, said Representative Korth of the Hive Confederation, his multiple heads speaking in eerie harmony, the burning mind is not merely a medical condition. It is one of 3 trials used throughout the galaxy to test the worthiness of emerging species. Sarah felt the room spin slightly. I'm sorry, what? Ambassador Trillax leaned forward, her crystalline features refracting the light into rainbow patterns. The Galactic Council has been observing humanity for the past decade, Dr. Chen. Your species shows remarkable potential, but also concerning tendencies toward conflict and unpredictability. The trials, Emperor Vexhi's voice rumbled through the room, are designed to test the three qualities we consider essential for admission to full galactic citizenship: wisdom, compassion, and the ability to think beyond conventional limitations. Captain Morrison finally found his voice. You're saying that Princess Cathara's illness was staged? Not staged, the Emperor replied, his patterns showing what Sarah now recognized as deep respect. The burning mind is real and dangerous. But my daughter volunteered to undergo the trial because she believed in humanity's potential. Sarah's mind raced. So this was a test of human medical philosophy? More than that, said Dr. Helix of the Symbiotic Union, her 6 arms gesturing gracefully. It was a test of whether humans could see beyond the obvious, whether they could show empathy for a mind different from their own, and whether they could solve a problem that has challenged galactic medicine for millennia. The weight of what had happened began to settle on Sarah's shoulders. And if I had failed, then humanity would have remained classified as promising but dangerous, Ambassador Trillax chimed. Your species would have been limited to supervised contact for another century. Sarah looked around the room at the assembled aliens, beings from civilizations that had mastered interstellar travel before humans discovered fire. They had all been watching, judging, evaluating her actions. Dr. Chen, said Representative Korth, your approach to the princess's condition was unprecedented. Rather than attempting to suppress or eliminate her psychic abilities, you taught her to understand and control them. You treated the emotional root cause rather than the physical symptoms. Emperor Vexhi stood, his massive presence commanding the room. More importantly, you showed my daughter that her power was not a curse to be contained, but a gift to be mastered. This distinction is crucial. In 5,000 years of galactic civilization, Dr. Helix added, no species has ever solved the burning mind through psychological intervention. Most attempt technological solutions, some try genetic modification. A few, like the Void Walkers, recommend surgical removal of psychic centers. Sarah felt a chill. Surgical removal. The traditional approach, Ambassador Trillax confirmed. Safe, effective, and it eliminates the problem, but it also eliminates the individual's psychic potential permanently. Barbaric, Sarah whispered, then caught herself addressing the most powerful beings in known space. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... You did mean it, Emperor Vexhi said, his patterns now blazing with something that looked like pride. And that reaction is precisely why humanity passed the first trial. Captain Morrison leaned forward. The first trial? Representative Korth's multiple heads turned toward him in unison. The healing of Princess Cathara was the trial of compassion. Dr. Chen demonstrated that humans value the preservation of individual potential over convenience or safety. Sarah's heart began to race. There are more trials? 2 more, confirmed Dr. Helix. The trial of wisdom and the trial of innovation. Both are scheduled to take place during your mission to the Andromeda Gateway. The Andromeda Gateway was humanity's most ambitious diplomatic mission, a months-long journey to establish contact with civilizations in the neighboring galaxy. Sarah had assumed she was just along as medical support. With respect, Captain Morrison said carefully, shouldn't humanity have been told we were being tested? Ambassador Trillax's crystalline form shifted colors. Captain, if your species had known they were being evaluated, would their responses have been genuine? The trials are designed to reveal true character, not performance under observation. Emperor Vexhi moved around the table to stand before Sarah. Dr. Chen, my daughter has requested permission to accompany your expedition to the Gateway. She wishes to observe humanity's approach to the remaining trials. Sarah looked up at the towering alien monarch. Your Majesty, Isn't that dangerous? If we fail these trials, then she will bear witness to a fascinating species that was not yet ready for full galactic citizenship, he replied. But she believes, as I do, that humanity will surprise us all. The meeting continued for another hour, covering the technical details of the trials and the implications of success or failure. Sarah learned that fewer than 30 species in galactic history had passed all 3 trials. Those that had formed the core of the Galactic Council and enjoyed access to the most advanced technologies and trading routes. Those that failed weren't punished, but they remained under observation for centuries before being allowed to retest. As the session ended, Princess Kethara approached Sarah privately. The young royal had grown stronger since their first meeting, her psychic aura now controlled and purposeful. "Dr. Chen, I wanted to thank you personally," she said, her voice carrying musical undertones that human ears could barely detect. "Your treatment did more than heal my condition. It taught me that my people's approach to power might not be the only way." Sarah studied the princess's face, noting the confidence that hadn't been there before. "How do you feel about being part of this evaluation?" "Honored," Kethara replied without hesitation. "And curious. Your species approaches problems from angles that others would never consider. My father believes this makes you potentially the most valuable allies in the galaxy." "And if we fail?" The princess smiled, an expression that was still learning on her alien features. "Then I will have learned much about a remarkable species that thought differently than anyone expected." That evening, Sarah found herself in the Meridian's observation lounge, staring out at the stars while trying to process everything she had learned. Humanity had been under observation for years without knowing it. Their actions, their decisions, their very approach to solving problems was being weighed and measured. Captain Morrison joined her at the viewport. "Feeling the pressure, Doctor?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "What if the next trials are something I can't handle? What if I make the wrong choice?" "From what I've seen," Morrison replied, "you've never made the wrong choice when it mattered. Besides, you won't be facing these trials alone." Sarah nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling that somehow she had become the key to humanity's future among the stars. The alien spoke of wisdom, compassion, and innovation as if these were rare qualities, but to her, they were simply part of being human. Maybe that was the point. Over the next few days, as the Meridian prepared for departure to the Andromeda Gateway, Sarah found herself spending time with Princess Kethara. The young royal was fascinated by human culture, particularly their approaches to medicine and psychology. "Your species sees connections that others miss," Kethara observed during one of their conversations. "When you treated my condition, you didn't just look at the symptoms. You looked at me as a complete being with thoughts, fears, and experiences." "Isn't that normal?" Sarah asked. "Among my people, medical treatment is typically focused on biological functions. Emotional considerations are secondary." Kethara's patterns shifted to show contemplation. "Your approach was revolutionary." Sarah realized that what humans considered basic bedside manner was apparently unknown among advanced galactic civilizations. The implications were staggering. As the Meridian departed the diplomatic station with Princess Kethara aboard as an official observer, Sarah watched the stars stretch into lines through the viewport. Somewhere ahead lay the Andromeda Gateway and 2 more trials that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. She thought about the princess's words about seeing connections others missed. Perhaps that was humanity's gift, the ability to look at problems from impossible angles, to find solutions in places others never thought to search. The first trial had tested their compassion. Sarah had passed by treating a patient as a whole being rather than a collection of symptoms. What would the next trials demand? And was humanity ready for whatever lay ahead? Behind them, the diplomatic station grew smaller, but Sarah knew they carried with them the weight of galactic expectations. Success would open doors to technologies and alliances beyond imagination. Failure would mean waiting centuries for another chance. The stars offered no answers, but Sarah felt a growing certainty that whatever came next, humanity would face it in their own unique way. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. The Andromeda Gateway hung in space like a colossal work of art, its crystalline structures spanning hundreds of kilometers and pulsing with energy that connected two galaxies. Sarah had seen images, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of standing before humanity's greatest engineering achievement, even if it had been built with alien assistance. 3 weeks had passed since their departure from the diplomatic station. During that time, Princess Cathara had become an unexpected friend, teaching Sarah about galactic history while learning about human psychology and medicine. But today, the princess seemed unusually tense. "Dr. Chen," she said as they stood in the observation deck, "I should tell you about the remaining trials." Sarah turned from the massive gateway to face her alien friend. "I thought you weren't allowed to give me hints." "Not hints," Cathara replied, her patterns showing concern. "Context. The trial of wisdom will test your species' ability to make difficult decisions when all choices lead to loss. The trial of innovation will challenge you to solve a problem that has no known solution." Before Sarah could respond, Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All senior staff to the bridge. We have incoming vessels from multiple civilizations." The bridge was chaos when Sarah arrived. The main screen showed dozens of ships from various species converging on the gateway. Some she recognized, crystalline collective vessels with their geometric beauty, Zephyrian ships that looked grown rather than built. Others were completely alien. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Hayes from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Council. They're requesting Dr. Chen's immediate presence aboard the Council flagship." Morrison turned to Sarah. "This is it, Doctor." "Ready?" Sarah looked around the bridge at her fellow humans, people who had volunteered for a mission they thought was about exploration and diplomacy, not knowing they carried the fate of their entire species. As ready as anyone can be. The Council flagship was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Different sections had been designed by various species, creating a vessel that was part space station, part mobile city. Sarah found herself in a vast chamber surrounded by representatives from 24 civilizations. At the chamber's center sat a complex holographic display showing a star system in crisis. The star was unstable, threatening to nova within months. Around it orbited a planet containing billions of sentient beings from a species that had only recently achieved spaceflight. Ambassador Trillax's crystalline form chimed softly as she addressed the assembly. "Counselors, we are here to witness the trial of wisdom. Dr. Chen, you will speak for humanity in this matter." Sarah approached the display, her medical scanner automatically analyzing the data. What she saw made her heart sink. The planet's inhabitants were silicon-based, similar to the crystalline collective but far less advanced. They had only recently launched their first orbital stations. "Dr. Chen," said Representative Korth, his multiple heads focusing on her intently, "this is the situation. The star will nova in approximately 4 months. The native species cannot evacuate their population in time with their current technology. We have the capability to relocate them, but their social structure is based on connection to their homeworld's unique geological formations." Dr. Helix's 6 arms gestured toward additional data streams. Removing them from their planet would destroy their civilization as surely as the nova. However, we also have the technology to artificially stabilize the star, preventing the nova indefinitely. Sarah studied the information flowing across the display. "What's the catch?" Stabilizing the star requires redirecting the nova's energy through the gateway network, Ambassador Trillax explained. The process would destroy the Andromeda Gateway permanently, cutting off contact between our galaxies for potentially centuries. The weight of the decision pressed down on Sarah. Save a primitive species by destroying humanity's greatest achievement and isolating two galaxies from each other. Let them die to preserve interstellar communication. How many beings are we talking about? Sarah asked. Approximately 12 billion, replied Dr. Helix. Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens. Their expressions, where she could read them, seemed expectant but neutral. This was her choice to make, speaking for all of humanity. Has anyone proposed alternative solutions? Representative Korth's heads tilted in unison. Every possible option has been analyzed by the finest minds in the galaxy. These are the only two viable paths. Sarah closed her eyes and thought about everything she had learned about human medicine, human problem-solving, human stubbornness in the face of impossible choices. No, she said finally. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Trillax's form stopped chiming entirely. Dr. Chen, please clarify your response. I refuse to accept that those are the only options, Sarah said, stepping closer to the holographic display. You've presented me with a false choice, save the planet or save the gateway. But what if there's a third option? She began highlighting different sections of the data. This star is going nova because of instabilities in its core fusion process, right? What if instead of preventing the nova or redirecting its energy, we controlled it? Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Dr. Helix's 6 arms moved in what Sarah had learned was agitation. Controlled stellar explosion is theoretically possible, but has never been attempted on this scale. Because no one had a reason to try, Sarah replied. But look at this. The planet's orbit puts it in the perfect position for a controlled nova to actually strengthen the system's stability long-term, not destroy it. She manipulated the display, showing energy projections that made several aliens recoil. If we time the nova precisely and use a combination of gravitational redirectors and energy dampeners, we can turn the explosion into a controlled burn that makes the system more stable, not less. Representative Korth's multiple heads began speaking rapidly in his native language. When he switched back to standard, his voice carried amazement. Dr. Chen, you're proposing to use the nova as a tool rather than treating it as a disaster. Exactly. The star wants to explode. Let it. But on our terms, in our way, for our purposes. Ambassador Trillax's crystalline form began chiming in complex harmonies. The computational requirements alone would require the combined processing power of every ship in this fleet, Sarah finished, including the Gateway's own systems. It would be the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. The chamber erupted in discussion. Aliens who had been silent began rapid calculations. Others argued about feasibility. Through it all, Sarah noticed Princess Kethara watching her with an expression of what could only be described as admiration. 3 hours later, after intense debate and calculation, Ambassador Trillax addressed the chamber again. The solution proposed by Dr. Chen is theoretically sound. Implementation would require unprecedented cooperation between our civilizations, but it would save both the planet and the Gateway. Representative Korth's heads nodded in unison. Humanity passes the trial of wisdom. Rather than choosing between two losses, they found a way to create victory. Before Sarah could process this success, the chamber's display shifted to show a new scenario. This time, the image showed a vast space anomaly, a region where space itself seemed to be unraveling. The trial of innovation, Dr. Helix announced. For 2 centuries, this anomaly has been expanding. It consumes matter, energy, even information. Nothing we have tried can stop or slow its growth. Sarah studied the data streaming past her. The anomaly was unlike anything in human scientific understanding, a region where the fundamental laws of physics seemed to break down. "What have you tried?" she asked. "Everything," Ambassador Trillax replied. "Energy barriers, gravitational containment, matter displacement, dimensional shielding. The anomaly absorbs or bypasses all countermeasures." Sarah noticed something in the data streams that made her pause. "Wait, you said it consumes information too?" "Yes. Any data storage device or cognitive memory that enters the anomaly is completely erased." "But communication still works near it?" Dr. Helix's arms moved in confusion. "Basic electromagnetic communications function normally until they cross the anomaly's boundary." Sarah began manipulating the display, focusing on communication logs from ships that had investigated the anomaly. "I need to see the transmission records from every probe and ship that's approached this thing." What she found made her smile for the first time since the trials began. "It's not consuming information, it's learning." The chamber fell silent again. Representative Korth's heads turned toward her in perfect synchronization. "Explain." "Look at the pattern of expansion. It's not random. The anomaly grows faster when it encounters new types of technology or energy signatures. It's essentially a cosmic infant, learning about the universe by experiencing everything it can." Sarah highlighted specific data points. "Every time you've tried to contain it with a new technology, it's grown larger because it's excited about the new experience. You've been feeding it by trying to stop it." Ambassador Trillax's chiming took on an urgent tone. "You're suggesting the anomaly is sentient?" "Not sentient. Curious, like a child touching everything within reach." Sarah paused, struck by a sudden insight. What if instead of trying to contain it, we taught it boundaries? The next hour was a blur of theoretical physics and xenopsychology. Sarah found herself working with the greatest minds in the galaxy to develop a communication protocol for a cosmic entity that existed beyond normal space-time. The solution, when it came, was beautifully simple. Instead of barriers or weapons, they would send the anomaly a gift, a carefully crafted data stream that would teach it about the concept of voluntary limitation, the way a parent teaches a child not to touch dangerous things. When the implementation succeeded, the anomaly stopping its expansion and actually contracting slightly in response to their communication, the chamber erupted in celebration that transcended species boundaries. Ambassador Trillax approached Sarah as the other council members began dispersing. "Dr. Chen, in galactic history, no species has ever solved both the wisdom and innovation trials with solutions that strengthened galactic civilization rather than simply resolving the immediate problems." Sarah felt exhausted, but exhilarated. "So humanity passes all 3 trials?" "With unprecedented success," confirmed Representative Korth. "Which brings us to your reward." Sarah had almost forgotten about the Emperor's promise. "I told His Majesty that I didn't need a reward." Princess Cathera approached, her patterns now blazing with excitement. "Dr. Chen, that response was itself part of the evaluation. Species that demand rewards for solving galaxy-threatening problems are concerning." Emperor Vexhai materialized in a holographic projection, his massive presence filling that section of the chamber. "Dr. Chen, your reward is not something I give. It is something humanity has earned through your actions." The chamber's main display activated, showing star charts that Sarah had never seen before. "These are the locations of 17 civilizations that have withdrawn from galactic contact due to problems they could not solve," the Emperor continued. "Medical conditions, social conflicts, technological barriers that have isolated them for centuries." Sarah felt her breath catch. "You want us to help them?" "We want to offer humanity the position of galactic mediator," Ambassador Trillax chimed. A role that has never existed because no species has ever demonstrated the necessary combination of wisdom, compassion, and innovation. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Not just galactic citizenship, galactic leadership. Humanity would become the species other civilizations turn to when facing impossible problems. Princess Kethera smiled, the expression now natural on her features. Dr. Chen, you healed me by seeing beyond the obvious symptoms to the fear beneath. In doing so, you showed the galaxy that humans see connections others miss, find solutions others cannot imagine, and refuse to accept that any problem is truly impossible. As Sarah looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of civilizations, beings who had mastered technologies beyond human understanding, she realized that they were all looking at her with something approaching awe. Humanity hadn't just passed their trials. They had redefined what was possible. Your species, Emperor Vexhai concluded, has a gift for making the impossible merely difficult. The galaxy needs that gift more than you can imagine. Sarah thought about the controlled nova that would save billions of lives while strengthening the star system. She thought about the cosmic anomaly that had become a willing partner in its own containment. She thought about Princess Kethara, whose terror had become mastery through understanding rather than suppression. All of it had started with a simple refusal to accept that there was no cure for fear. We accept, she said, speaking for all of humanity. But we'll do this our way. The Emperor's patterns blazed with what she now knew was profound respect. We would expect nothing less.